Welcome to Edified, Insights for LDS Women. I'm your host, Melinda Morgan. Edified is a podcast for busy LDS women who are looking for ways to draw closer to the Spirit and deepen their connection to Christ. In a word, this podcast is about connection, our connection with each other, and our connection with God. Now, if you're new to this podcast, I want to thank you for joining us today, and I invite you to learn more about my journey by listening to the first few episodes of Season 1. In those episodes, I share a lot of my story, and I explain my purpose for creating the Edified podcast. I also want to thank those of you who show up every week and support me in this journey, and I want to send a huge shout out to everyone who has taken the time to leave me a review in iTunes. You guys, those reviews are the best way for this podcast to grow. So from the bottom of my heart, I thank you. And one more thing, when you share the link to this podcast on your social media feeds, please tag me so I can thank you personally for your support. This week's episode is a reflection on Christina B. Franco's talk, The Healing Power of Jesus Christ. And I've invited someone very dear to me to join in the conversation and share her insights and her thoughts about what stood out to her as she studied Sister Franco's message. Okay, everyone, are you ready for this? Let's get edified. My special guest this week is Ashley Logan. She's also my daughter-in-law, married to my oldest son, Andrew. Ashley is a native Texan who graduated from Brigham Young University in 2016 with a degree in landscape management. She works for Intermountain Plantings as a project coordinator and estimator. She and Andrew met while they were both attending Brigham Young University, and they were married in 2012. Ashley and Andrew lost their daughter Joy to a condition known as Trisomy 18. It was a heartbreaking time for our whole family. And through it all, I observed how Andrew and Ashley gained strength through the enabling power of Christ's atonement. Their faith has been such an inspiration to me. In 2019, Andrew and Ashley welcomed a healthy boy into their family, and he has just been a true light and blessing to us all. Ashley understands what it means to be broken, kind of like the piano in Sister Franco's talk, and she understands the enabling and the ennobling power of Christ's atonement, the power that lifts us in times of sorrow and grief, heals us in our brokenness, and brings light and comfort to our dark and scary places. I asked Ashley to share how the healing power of Christ has helped her handle the grief of losing her daughter. I know all who listen to this episode will be moved by Ashley's heartfelt testimony and her witness of the saving grace of Jesus Christ. I recorded my interview with Ashley in advance, so we're just going to jump in to the conversation already in progress. Enjoy. We are taking a dive into the healing power of Jesus Christ, which was the talk by Christina Franco in October. And, you know, the first time I heard this talk, the only thing I could think of was the piano. I was like, you dropped their piano.
A baby, what was it, a baby grand?
A baby grand player piano.
Yeah.
It's like, that is like, that's a lot of money.
Yeah. That was not a small mistake.
No, and when she said that her husband was so forgiving and he was on the phone saying, "Oh, just repair it and give it to, we'll be fine." I remember thinking, it's like a $20,000 piano. I mean, I was like, Of course, the first time I went through this, and when I was able to go through it in a quiet moment, I just kept going back to you and Andrew, the story of Joy. And when you said that this was the one that spoke to you, I was like, yeah, this is meant to be. So what were your initial thoughts after reading her talk?
After getting past the piano part. My initial thoughts were we all are like this piano. We're all a little broken sometimes, most times, and more than once throughout our lives. I just loved how she talked about how Christ is the master healer. And she talks about how we can find healing through him and we can be mended, and I love the example she gives in the talk, where Christ will and the Father will not leave us comfortless in our trials. Even though we all have trials and we all will have trials always, God doesn't want to see us suffer. And so he has provided several avenues for us to find some healing and some help through those. And
so true. I read Emily Belle Freeman's book, Grace Where You Are. Have I told you about this?
I don't think so.
Okay. And it made me think of Joy. It's a really good book. And I listened to it in the car while I was driving. And she reads the story herself, which makes it even better. But she made a comment in there that has just stayed with me. And she said, God doesn't give people cancer. God doesn't give people depression. He doesn't give people an extra Y chromosome. He doesn't give people mutations that cause their bodies to be deformed or dysfunctional. And, she went through this. God doesn't give people that. Mortality does. That statement just I remember driving in the car and just pulling over and thinking, I got to think about this, because it is mortality that gives us all those diseases and all those mutations and all the hardships come as a result of being mortal and not being or being in a fallen world. And she said, but he has promised us that whatever mortality gives us, he's greater than that, and he can succor us through it. And I got to thinking about that, and I thought of Joy. Joy keeps coming to my mind here, but possibly there's some listeners who don't know this story. Did you want to share some of that with listeners?
Yeah, sure. Where to begin?
Begin before the first miscarriage, because I think that's where your trial of faith
kind of started. Yeah, so in September 2016, Andrew and I were newly expecting a baby. So we went to our 10-week appointment and we found out that I had miscarried. It was kind of strange. It was our first pregnancy. I wasn't quite sure how to take it, like how to react to that kind of news. It just kind of shocked me because you don't expect those kinds of things to just happen. And then later that night, Andrew got appendicitis. And so I had to take him to the ER. It was like in the middle of the night. And then it kind of hit me as I'm sitting there at 2 a.m. in the hospital while Andrew is like writhing in pain, and we're waiting for results and things to be more clear for us on what the next steps are. I'm just kind of sitting in a chair curled up in the corner of the hospital room, just kind of wondering what's going on. Like, okay, we just found out I had a miscarriage. Andrew is having appendicitis right now. So now we're both getting surgery this week. And that was kind of the start of it. As time went on and as we tried to figure out certain fertility things for us, it was really hard to deal with having that loss. My anxiety really shot up after that, almost to the point where I really couldn't function normally. And I was really scared of a lot of things.
Did you experience anger? I remember my first miscarriage. My first pregnancy ended in miscarriage. And I just remember feeling so angry. Like, why would God take something so good away from me,
For my miscarriage, I don't remember being angry a whole lot, but I remember being fearful. I was fearful a lot. That, I think, is what spiked my anxiety so much. I came to a point in my mind where I was like, okay, I need to change something. I can't live like this, I just decided what makes me feel safe and what makes me feel good was the gospel. And so I really turned everything, like every thought And every action, I tried to invite the Spirit into my mind and my heart. And it's not easy to do that, right? Because you live everyday life. Like I had work, I had school, I had certain things, but I tried to always like listen to conference talk, listen to church music, because that's what worked for me. But what really helped me was me finally, really for the first time in my life, bearing down and studying the Book of Mormon and trying to learn Christ through the Book of Mormon. Because I've read the Book of Mormon before. I grew up in the church and like that, but it was kind of a turning point for me in my testimony was this miscarriage. Turning to Christ, I was finally able to work through the things that were haunting me. And then I was finally able to get an answer to try and get pregnant again because I was really scared of that loss again. And lo and behold, we get pregnant with Joy. And she was the blessing we never asked for. I got pregnant right away with her. You know, things were going normally in the pregnancy. And I always had in the back of my mind, like I didn't share things about this pregnancy openly because I always had a little bit of fear that something was wrong. But things kept looking good. We always had a heartbeat at the appointments. Like she was growing okay. But then we get to our 20-week ultrasound appointment, and that's when we discover that she has several defects. And then we found out we need to do some blood testing to see what's going on. And it turns out that she was diagnosed with Trisomy 18. Joy had a full extra chromosome 18. There's different types of this deformity, but we knew at a more detailed ultrasound the next day that she would not survive this pregnancy. And that moment, that was one of the darkest days of my life. Being there in that hospital room, receiving that news and just not comprehending and not understanding that things like this could happen. Because before Joy, I never really heard of things like this happening, and it was quite the shock. And so we went home and we cried, but then we had one of our good friends come and give both Andrew and I blessings that night. And, you know, we kind of just, okay, you know, this is what we're going to be facing. Not sure how this is going to happen. Not sure how we're going to make it through, but we're going to try and have faith. And I say that, but I also want you to know that there were several days where I was angry. I got angry at this one, and I was very broken. And there were days where I didn't know how I was going to make it the next hour, let alone to the next day. Like, how could I live through this experience? And how could I carry her just to lose her? So a lot of difficult emotions, a lot of difficult feelings and choices had to be made. But the ultimate ending was we were grateful for the time we had with her. And so I did decide to carry her full term, and she made it 37 weeks. She wasn't very big, but ultimately she was born still. But we got to hold her and make memories with what we had. And I'm very grateful for what we had, because we have even had more than, I'll say my grandma. My grandma had a stillborn. And at that time, she didn't even know if it was a boy or girl because they just took the sweet baby away. And that story always broke my heart. And so I'm very grateful for the memories we have with Joy.
I'll never forget when you guys gave me the news. And I just remember the idea of my child hurting so much. And I just remember thinking, why Andrew? Why the kid who tried so hard to do everything right his whole life? I remember having those questions, and I know we're not supposed to ask why. It was just kind of it seemed so unfair. And yet I know better. I remember just thinking how it was going to be so painful for the two of you. And I remember very distinctly the Lord saying to me through the Spirit, they have the faith to endure this. They're strong enough, and this is going to make them stronger. I also remember the warning when I thought I just wanted to pray for a miracle. save her, make it not be trisomy 18, make it be they were wrong, make it be she's born healthy. And I just remember the Lord saying, be careful what you're praying for. I have a celestial being that I am sending to their family. And then I remembered Andrew's patriarchal blessing and the struggles that your children would have. And I thought, they need joy. They need this baby on the other side of the veil, strengthening them, and that this was a blessing. And you made that comment. And I think that's one of the most beautiful ways I've heard it put. She was the blessing that we never asked for. You didn't ask to lose a child. You didn't, ask to have to go 20 weeks in a pregnancy knowing that you wouldn't get to keep your baby.
Yeah.
But treasuring every moment that you had while she was with you. And yet what a blessing she was and is to our family. I know there's a lot in this talk about brokenness, but I just remember how broken you were after your first miscarriage. And I worried, if that broke her that much, what is this going to do to her? And then what I saw was miraculous, because I saw you and Andrew submit your will to the Lord with gratitude for every moment you were going to have with her. I saw your strength, and I just saw you rise above this with such, I don't know what the word is, because I felt like you were given power to be the parents of this child that you weren't going to keep. Tell me about how the Lord strengthened you, because I know that there were days when, like you said, you were angry and when you were sad, and when the loss seemed overwhelming and too much to bear. How did the Lord help you through those times?
Andrew and I talk about this all the time, actually, because it's still it overwhelms me. It was unbelievable, the support system that we had surrounding us during all of this and helping us through. Our ward family, that was the first time we experienced something like that. It was like we all were true brothers and sisters. They rallied around us so tightly, and they would help us with anything. And not just them, but like the medical community too that we were working with. Huge blessings. I mean, they were literal angels working with us. And will always be grateful for them helping us through this. I'll give you a quick example. So the day we had that ultrasound and I needed to get some blood drawn for my test, I was just a mess. I couldn't stop crying, and I was just sobbing and sobbing. There was 2 people in the room taking blood from patients. One of them asked, "Are you okay?" And both Andrew and I were like, "No, we are not okay." The other person taking blood, she had a daughter who went through the same thing. And it's like, wow, I've gone my whole life not knowing a single person who's gone through something like this, to the moment after we found out. And she was able to share her experience with us, and she cried with us. And that was just so touching. And it was just moments of like that. I received several priesthood blessings during this time. And one of the blessings that I was given was anytime I prayed for comfort, I would receive it. And it worked. Christ was there with me. And when I had my broken days, and I would just kind of fall to the floor and just cry because I didn't know what else to do, if I could muster just a little prayer, just help me. It was almost like releasing all those emotions and feelings was what needed to happen for me, if that makes sense. And God was able to come in and how the angel is depicted in the painting where he's in Gethsemane. I felt that a lot. Like there was someone there just kind of holding me and crying with me and then telling me we'll make it through. And in situations like that, you kind of just have to make it through. But Andrew was also a huge blessing. Him and I both really were able to come together and be closer through this trial than pulled apart, which I'm very, very grateful for, because I know that doesn't always happen. He was just there to hold me a lot of the time. We prayed a lot together. We had our friends and our family. I don't know. The amount of people who would just drop things to come and help was miraculous.
It reminds me of Sister Eubank's talk when she's talking about by union of feeling, we obtain power with God. I think that's what you're describing right here so beautifully, that the union of feeling between the nurses, the medical staff, the ward family, that allowed you to have power with God, to give you strength.
That is a beautiful way to put it. I would say that exactly.
Wow, that's incredible. I'm trying to put myself in your place. I know my mom lost two stillborn full terms. I kind of think sometimes that she was one of those angels telling you, you're going to make it through this. You know, my parents weren't members of the church. They didn't even have really a religion, but she felt like there was a plan. And, you know, I look at that selfishly. I think if those two babies had lived, they wouldn't have been my parents. But I do think I've more than once that my mom and dad have been with you. I'll never forget the night the night when you had your miscarriage and Andrew had the appendicitis attack. Ron had left and I was still in California. Both of you were going in at different times for procedures. And I remember being alone and afraid in my apartment, and I remember praying, asking the Lord to send my mom to help me, because I thought, you know, nothing's going to hurt me if my mom's watching over me. And I will never forget this as long as I live, almost hearing my mom's voice audibly saying, I'll be with you if you need me. But right now, I think Andrew needs me more. And I just remember thinking, oh, of course, she would be with Andrew and Ashley right now. And I just remember finding comfort in that. And then I asked for my aunt to come and be with me. I do believe in these angels on both sides of the veil. And it sounds like you've experienced that. I mean, this whole talk about being broken and about the power of the Lord to succor us through. And then I think of your experience. You have experienced angels on both sides of the veil in your times of being broken. That's such a testimony to me that what we're being taught is true. These are promised blessings that you can count on.
Yeah, and we all can. I really liked in her talk, she's quoting Mosiah, and she's talking about Alma and his brethren and the burdens that were placed upon them. It's as the Lord did strengthen them that they could bear up their burdens with ease. For when I read that, I was like, oh my goodness, like, yes, that is what he did for Andrew and I. Like, that doesn't mean you don't have hard or bad days, and it doesn't mean that the trial you're going through is any less painful, but there's moments where he will carry you through, and you can make it to the next little while until you come back to him again.
I think we call that grace.
Yeah.
Grace where you are in that moment. How do you think her message applies to what all of us are experiencing right now with 2020?
Well, I mean, it's 2020. Like, I feel like I don't feel like a single soul on this earth has been spared from any heartache or burden or trial that 2020 has brought, whether that be social, economic, physical trials. Like, we've had them all. I think 2020 has broken a lot of people. It's been a harder year for most. Her message is so important because to really come to know Christ's healing power, you need to understand what he did for us and why he has that power. I learned that through my miscarriage and through Joy. It gave me a connection because Heavenly Father and Heavenly Mother have lost children. They had to watch their purest child go through his atonement alone, and they had to watch him be crucified. I too lost a perfect child in a different way, but that gave me a connection that I hadn't had before with God or my Heavenly Mother.
Yes, both parents.
It helped me understand that Christ and what he did for us was nothing short of a miracle. When I was like on my knees and just sobbing and crying and not knowing how I was going to even just get off the floor, I think it was Elder Holland, and I remember him mentioning, when you're going through things like that, try imagining Christ in the garden kneeling with you and bearing that burden with you, because he has, and he has felt it, and he chose to do that for us. I didn't choose to lose Joy, but thinking back on it, don't ever want to go through that again. But I think I would, to still have the same experiences and to know the things I know now.
I remember when she was born and I was holding her and you made that statement to me, I would do it all again for her. And I thought, wow, that is a love that is so profound. That you loved her so much that you would go through all that pain again for her. I just remember being so touched by that. you also bore an incredible testimony at her funeral. And then when we sat around as a family, and Andrew was talking about how because he held the priesthood, he held the power that could save her, but he didn't have the permission to use the power in that way. He had the power to do it, but he wasn't going to do anything that would have been outside of God's will. And I think of you back in that garden with Christ, both of you say, is there any way that I don't have to drink this cup?
Yeah.
And then when you know inside you're going to have to drink this cup, there's almost a sanctifying power that comes in you because you know I'm going to drink the cup and I'm going to have God's help to get me through it.
It
For the
is.
people who haven't been through a broken time, and everybody will experience, like you said, everybody experiences some form of brokenness. Yours was thrust on you, a mortal experience. And I think about what Emily Belle Freeman said, God didn't give joy, Trisomy 18, mortality did. But all of us in the pre-existence, well, the 2/3 of us who kept that estate, we were willing to do this. Like we knew the price. We knew how bad it could be and how painful and how unfair that mortality can be for people. And still we clapped our hands with joy for this plan.
Yeah.
And it must have been scary because 1/3 of the father's children said, no, I can't do it.
Yeah.
And they didn't support it. Why do bad things happen? People ask that all the time. If God loved us, why does he make us suffer so much? And it's like mortality makes us suffer. God's what helps us through the suffering. What do you feel like you're being asked, or we as a people are being asked to change or to do better?
I think it's to come to know Christ and to really understand how we can access his succoring power to help us through mortality. It's interesting that you say that mortality gives us these trials, right? One thing I've been pondering on lately is you've probably heard the phrase, God won't give me anything I can't handle. Well, I'm kind of challenged that, like, I think we do get things we can't handle. Like I could not handle losing my daughter. Who can handle that? Or who can handle a bad divorce or cancer? Or, there are so many hard things that go on in this world. But I think the Lord won't give me anything I can't handle without him. Does that make sense?
There's going to be things that we can't handle on our own, but he won't give us anything we can't handle with his help. I think that's a really good point, because I do hear people say that they actually throw it. Well, I know God won't give me anything that I can't handle. And I think you're right. I think purposely mortality does give us things that we can't handle. And that's where grace comes in.
Yeah, he paid the ultimate price just so we could be saved, because we meant that much to him.
It's a powerful love. I mean, as a parent, you start to get glimpses of a love that is so profound that you can't even put it into words, and to think that he has that love for every single person, whoever has or ever will live.
Right. And so going back to your question, I think what we need to change, what we need to learn is how to have the faith and to be worthy of these blessings, so that when these times of trial do come, we will have access to that succoring power to help endure through these times.
How do we do that?
It's a hard thing. It's hard to say it, but I kind of learned it as I went, and as I still go through the pain of losing joy. Just showing that little bit of faith, like, okay, Heavenly Father, today I will trust that it will be okay today. Just help me through a little bit. Help me through for the next hour or through the night, and then we'll kind of start again tomorrow. But I think it can be different for everybody. I think really coming to understand who Christ was and why he did what he did for us will help those understand their trial a little bit better, or understand trials of others and what others go through as well, and hopefully make us a little more kind-hearted and service-oriented.
I remember a time where I was not feeling connected. I remember thinking that I needed a blessing, and my son, Taylor, gave me a blessing, and it was his first blessing that he had ever given, and it was very short. And about 2 weeks later, the bishop I was Relief Society president when this happened. And the bishop said, I feel like you need a blessing. And I said, well, Taylor gave me a blessing 2 weeks ago. He said, would you like another blessing? And I remember thinking that the answer to that was no, but I didn't know why. And so I went home and I was writing in my journal, and I thought I'm just going to write all of my thoughts out and all the things that are troubling me right now. And as I came to the close, I got this impression, go back and read what you just wrote. And I did. And the thing that jumped out to me was the number of times that I wrote the words fear and worry. And I went through and I circled all of those. And there were like 13 of them. And then it was just this, your problem isn't all of this. Your problem is fear cannot coexist with faith. Right now, you are being guided by fear. That's what all of that writing was. And that hit me like, wow. The antidote for that is, how do I replace doubt and fear with faith? And then I went back to Taylor's blessing. And I realized he said in that blessing exactly what I needed to do to strengthen my faith at that time. And I knew I did not need another blessing, that he had given me the one the Lord wanted me to receive. I feel like you shared with us how you replaced your fear and your worry with faith. And sometimes it was just get me through the next hour. You continually did that and went to the Lord and allowed him to carry you through when you thought, I can't make it through another day. On the back side of this template, I asked the question, what am I hearing that hasn't been said? That's something that Elder Bednar kept bringing up in his devotional. He kept saying, what are you hearing that I didn't say? I just remember thinking, oh my gosh, that's brilliant.
Yeah.
As you studied this talk, what did you hear that you didn't read?
The thing that kind of stood out to me was being broken isn't a bad thing, and it happens, and it's okay that it happens, whether by our own actions and choices or whether they're thrust upon us by outside forces or other people's choices. It gives us the opportunity to grow. I don't think we're supposed to be the same ever again after we're broken. One of the things I did in a therapy session after Joy, it's called Kintsugi art, and it's a Japanese form of art, and it's where they take broken dishes and they seal them back together with gold. The reason for that is because in Japan, broken objects are often filled with the gold, and then the flaw is seen as unique and beautiful because it is now part of that object's history. I have a vase that I did that, and it was very healing and it was very symbolic. That's kind of what I took away from here, because we can let our experiences and our brokenness be mended by Christ, and he will fill those cracks with something beautiful. And it now becomes part of our history and of our story. And because I have lost, I have now been connected to so many families who have also lost. And I hear so many stories, and I have been able to be a friend and a listening ear of comfort to those who are hurting. And to me, that has been so precious and so purposeful in my life. Losing a child is something no one should ever have to know in any way, however you lose that beautiful spirit. It's hard. I think embracing our brokenness, we can hopefully take that and try and become something new and let it become part of our story.
Some of us will be filled with a little more gold than others.
Yeah, I think so.
Mine's probably mostly gold. Did you come across what I call shareable quotables in her talk, something that you thought this would be great to share out in social media?
Oh, yeah. So at the end of the talk, she actually quotes Ted R. Callister, and he says he, speaking of Heavenly Father, has the power to convert the ashes of mortality to the beauties of eternity.
Isn't that beautiful?
That just struck so much to me, because our ashes of mortality was Joy's body and losing her. However, the beauty of eternity is to be with her again, and we will always have her. And so I love that quote, because mortality can thrust many things upon people.
Sometimes it sucks. Let's just be honest.
Yes. But I have hope in the eternities that God will make things right and he will wipe the tears off of our face and say, look at what I have for you. This is what it was all for. You made it.
And what hope that gives us. I cannot imagine people going through mortality without the blessings of an eternal perspective that we have in the gospel of Jesus Christ, because we do believe in eternal families.
Yes. And I pray every night in gratitude with AJ for our eternal family.
Listeners may not know this, but you did get pregnant again. And, and I mean, that took courage, Ashley. I mean,
it did.
Back to back losses. And I remember while you were carrying AJ the whole time, there was this part of you that worried, what's going to go wrong?
I'm a naturally worried, fearful person. And it's hard to keep that perspective a lot of the time. But yes, I had extreme anxiety being pregnant with AJ that I would lose again, because that's something I never want to go through ever again. And thankfully, we were blessed with a healthy baby boy. He's just the light of our lives.
Yes, he is.
And I have no doubt that joy is watching over him and will help him through this life of mortality.
What a blessing. Are there any parting thoughts that you didn't get to share from this talk that you'd like before we close?
I just wrote down, I think people get hung up on, well, how do I have enough faith? What does that look like? What does that mean? And I wrote down having complete faith or having a mustard grain size of seed of faith. They both work miracles. And faith can be as simple as just saying a prayer and saying, God, just help me through the next little while, because I feel like I can't make it. Or even a lot of the time I was just like, just help me. That's all I would say. It was really hard to get anything else out. They don't have to be big gestures. All he wants is for us to come to him, because he wants to help us. Because he knows, just like how I know what it's like to lose and how I want to help other women who have lost as well. He wants to help us through our trials because he knows what it's like.
Yes, he does. Ashley, what edifies you?
Being around good examples and service and listening to general conference talks to keep listening on things I can improve on and where I need to work on, and having good content and media in my home. And my husband, Andrew, he sure is a build your house on a rock.
He was born that way, Ashley.
He can help calm my fears a lot, and he is a great example. I'm very grateful for him.
You know, that is a first for me. I've been asking the question, what edifies you, to so many people. And you're the first person I've heard that said their husband edifies them. That is really a testament to your relationship with him and to the strength of your marriage. That's a wonderful thing to hear. I love that. Thank you so much for being willing to go down this journey again and share your experience with people. I know that there are people out there who can be strengthened by your experience and by your faith and your testimony. So thank you for being willing to do that.
Well, thank you for letting me share. We love talking about joy and all that she's taught us and still teaches us.
Okay, you guys, I thank Ashley Logan for being our guest today and for opening up to us. I hope you are feeling edified through listening to her experience and having her share some of her insights from this conference talk. So let's talk about our Do One Thing invitation for this week. The thing that's coming to my mind is, let's all take a look at the little acts of faith that we could be doing that will just send the message to the Lord that we are moving forward in faith. Let's each of us this coming week do something each day, that's some small thing that is an action of faith. Whatever that small act of faith is for you, let's make that our Do One Thing invitation this week. And let's try. Right now, we're in this light the world, and I know a lot of people are doing things on social media to help light the world. And so maybe that's your act of faith that you can do this week. Something small that lights the world, either the world within you or the world around you, or both. All right, you guys, I hope that you have a wonderful week. Christmas is getting closer and closer. And I've spoken with a few people who have told me that they've had to cancel their plans for travel because they, can't gather in large groups, and they're going to be spending Christmas alone. So I know it's going to be hard for a lot of people. So maybe we can keep them in our prayers and look around us and see who might be lonely, that maybe we can do something to just add a little light to their holiday season. Remember, if you share this episode with your friends on social media, please tag me so that I can thank you personally. Have a great week, everyone. Till next time.